Let's get right into it. Number 8. Yakhchals. Ancient Persians had ice cream in the middle of a desert 2,400 years ago. They built massive cone-shaped buildings called Yakhchals that could keep ice frozen even when it was hot enough outside to fry an egg on the ground. The walls were made from a special mix of mud, sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash. This ancient mixture worked better than modern insulation. It wasn't cone-shaped just to look cool. It also had a purpose. Hot air would rise and escape through holes in the top, while cool air sank into underground storage chambers. These chambers were so huge you could park several buses in them. Massive shade walls surrounded these structures, some as tall as a 4-story building. Shallow pools around them would freeze at night when desert temperatures dropped. The workers would cut this ice into blocks and separate them with straw to stop them from becoming one giant unusable chunk. These ice houses could keep ice frozen even when it was 120 degrees outside. Ancient Persians used this ice to make falude, a frozen dessert that people still eat today. Some of these yakhchals are still standing after 2,400 years. Compare that to modern fridges that last about 15 years and need constant electricity. Number 7. Aztec Chinampas. The Aztecs built entire farms on water that put our modern farms to shame. They'd drive wooden stakes into shallow lake bottoms to make a big rectangle. Then they'd weave reeds between these stakes, like building a giant underwater basket. They'd fill this basket with lake-bottom mud and pile on layers of dead plants until they had an island. The water around these islands acted like a natural sprinkler system. The mud they used was super rich in nutrients. These floating farms were so productive they could grow 7 harvests a year. Modern farms are lucky to get 2 or 3, even with all their fancy equipment. Per acre, they produced 13 times more food than regular farming. Farmers moved between plots in canoes, like some kind of ancient Venice. Fish lived in the canals and helped control pests. Birds would swing by for free pest control too. The system was so efficient it fed hundreds of thousands of people in their capital city. Number 6. The Inca Chasqui system. The Incas built a messaging system faster than modern email, without electricity, internet, or even horses. They had these guys called Chasqui, elite runners who could sprint through mountains like they were taking a stroll in the park. These weren't your average joggers. They'd sprint up and down steep trails at altitudes that would make most of us pass out just standing still. The system worked like a giant game of tag. One runner would sprint to a relay station, tag the next guy, and pass the message. The new runner would already be rested and ready to bolt. This way, the message never stopped moving. They could send a message 250 miles in just 24 hours. That's like running from New York to Washington, D.C. in a day, but through the Andes Mountains. While our modern delivery systems crashed during bad weather, these guys kept running through storms, across ice, and through desert heat. The system was so reliable that fresh fish from the Pacific could reach the emperor in the mountains within 24 hours, basically like getting same-day sushi delivery, but 500 years ago. The whole thing worked so well that when the Spanish showed up with their fancy horses, they actually preferred using the Chasqui for important messages. Turns out horses weren't as good at running up and down mountain trails as these guys. Number 5. Polynesian Wayfinding. Ancient Polynesians crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without any fancy tools. No GPS, no compass, not even a map, just their brains and their eyes. They turned the whole sky into a giant compass. They split the horizon into 32 sections, like slicing up a massive pie in the sky. Each slice was a house, where different stars would rise and set. They could also read the ocean like we read road signs. Every wave pattern, every current, was giving them directions. They could feel an island's presence just by watching the ocean move. They even used birds as their personal navigation system. A seabird flying out to sea in the morning would lead them to fish. That same bird would lead them back to land in the evening. While Europeans were still hugging coastlines, these guys were island hopping across the biggest ocean on Earth. They could find tiny islands in the middle of nowhere, like finding a penny in a football field. Modern scientists said no one could navigate thousands of miles of empty ocean just by looking at stars and waves. Then modern Polynesians proved them wrong by building traditional canoes and sailing across the Pacific using only the old methods. Number 4. Ancient Greek sponge divers. These divers would plunge 200 feet underwater with no oxygen tank and no wetsuit, just them and a heavy rock. They'd grab a stone called a scandalopetra, take one deep breath, and drop into the darkness. The stone would pull them down fast, like an underwater elevator to the seafloor. At depths that would make modern free divers nervous, they'd calmly walk around collecting sponges. Their bodies would actually change to handle these extreme conditions. Their hearts would slow to half speed underwater. Their spleens would release extra oxygen-rich blood, kinda like having a backup oxygen tank built into their bodies. Before each diving season, the whole town would gather. Women would dress in black and pray to St. Nicholas for their husband's safe return. Everyone knew some of the divers wouldn't come back. A diver from Simi once recovered a battleship's anchor from 250 feet down. He looked half dead on the surface, but underwater he turned into some kind of human submarine. Another one of these divers accidentally found the Antikythera mechanism, which is basically the world's oldest computer. Imagine finding an iPhone in your great-great-grandfather's attic. That's how impossible this discovery was. Number 3. Qanats. Ancient Persians built underground water tunnels so perfect that thousands of them are still working after 3,000 years. Meanwhile, our modern water pipes burst if someone sneezes too hard near them. These tunnels, called Qanats, could stretch up to 50 miles underground. That's like digging a tunnel from New York to Philadelphia, but doing it by hand with oil lamps as your only light. They dug these tunnels at just the right angle so water would flow naturally. Too steep, and the water turns into a destructive underground water slide. Too shallow, and the water just sits there like a lazy teenager. They had to dig vertical shafts every few hundred feet for air and access. These weren't just for breathing. They were like ancient GPS points to keep the tunnel straight. Working in complete darkness, one wrong move could unleash an underground flood or cause a cave-in. They were playing Minecraft in hardcore mode, but with real death. The system is so smart it can't be overused. When groundwater levels drop, the flow automatically decreases. It's like having a smart water system, but without the smart part that breaks every other week. Over 36,000 of these ancient tunnels are still working today. They've survived earthquakes, wars, and empires rising and falling. No electricity needed, no maintenance required, just gravity doing its thing. Number 2. Trepanation. Ancient people were drilling holes in each other's heads and somehow getting good survival rates. These guys were cutting open skulls with stone tools thousands of years ago, and their patients weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The survival rate was between 50 to 90%. That's an insanely high survival rate for the time. They had different techniques for different problems. Some would scrape away at the skull with sharp stones until they got through. Others would cut a circle and pop out a piece of bone like opening a can. The really fancy ones would drill a bunch of small holes in a circle, then connect the dots. The Incas were especially good at this. They could cut perfect square holes in skulls. Try cutting a perfect square in anything with stone tools. We know their patients lived for years after getting their heads drilled. The bone around the holes shows clear signs of healing. Some even had multiple holes drilled at different times. Some of these ancient surgeons kept the skull pieces they removed. They'd turn them into amulets to show off their surgical skills. Modern surgeons still use a similar tool called a trephine for brain surgery, but they need years of training and a sterile operating room. Number 1. The Sumerian Wheel. The wheel wasn't invented for moving stuff around. These ancient geniuses first made it to create perfect pottery. Some potter in ancient Iraq accidentally changed human history forever, while just trying to make better cups. They made these wheels from solid pieces of wood. The basic design was so good that even though we've added rubber tires and ball bearings, the core concept hasn't changed in 5,000 years. These wheels were so well made they could handle fully loaded carts on bumpy dirt roads. No maintenance required, no spare parts needed. The Incas built massive cities and complex road networks but never used wheels. The Aztecs knew about wheels, but only put them on children's toys. Meanwhile, the Sumerians were rolling around in style. We've gone from stone tools to smartphones, from cave paintings to virtual reality, but we're still using the same wheel design that's older than writing. Think about that next time you're driving somewhere. You're riding on technology that was perfected when people thought the moon was a god's nightlight. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.